questions. Okay, so I'm going to have to whiz through my presentation today. There's a lot to get through, but I did share with East earlier today the slides, so I'm hoping that you guys can refer back to them, and there will be hopefully some time for questions. So hopefully if you have any questions, you can ask me. I'm also had a thought afterwards that I should give you a list of the Western names, the Latin names, and also the Chinese names, because sometimes I'm going to be mostly using common names where possible, or occasionally I might switch into the Latin, but you guys might want to refer back to that piece of paper afterwards. I'm going to send that as well. So yeah, my background is I'm a medical herbalist, naturopath. I have had postgraduate training in TCM functional medicine and practicing for over 20 years. So we're going to jump straight in. So today, oh gosh, I can actually do this. Auto advance, there we go. So today we're going to be talking, as East said, about botanical medicine and its use in skin health. So we're going to try and cover as many topics as possible. It's a lot to cover in a short amount of time. So we're going to talk about skin aging. We're going to talk about common skin complaints, including acne, eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, and infection. So the first topic we're going to be covering is skin aging, and we're going to be looking at two main kind of factors in terms of skin aging. So one, we're going to talk about epigenetics and how we can actually alter that through herbal medicine and also through our diet and lifestyle to a degree. I'm not going to go into the lifestyle too much today. And we're also going to talk about how we can alter the biological pathways that are involved in aging. So some of you may have heard of the term inflammaging before, but like, how can we actually alter those pathways and change the process of aging? So first, I'm going to give you a little overview in epigenetics to help you to understand the topic. Some of you have maybe already heard about the term epigenetics, but basically the human genome is made up of DNA, and DNA has many different genes within it, and the genes code for specific proteins. So you may have heard of the term about genes being either turned off, so silenced, or turned on, so being able to be easily read. So in this diagram here, I'm just getting my little pointer here, my laser pointer, you will see that, I don't know if you can see my pointer there, actually, maybe it's not working. Sorry, bear with me, I'm going to use the highlighter instead. So on this side, you can see that this area of the DNA is tightly wrapped around these blue structures called histones. And you can see here the gene is difficult to read. So the gene on this side, you can't read it, hard to read. On this side, it's kind of uncoiled, and the gene is visible to be read by the messenger RNA. So on the left here, the gene we would call as silenced, and on the right here, it would be expressed. So the bonds that hold these genes together is called methyl groups or methylation. So some of you may have heard of the term methylation before. I'm sure many of you have. And actually, with age, methylation changes. Okay. So as we age, methylation goes down generally. So there's something called global hypomethylation. It's not quite as simple as that, as the body never is, because there can be some areas that are actually overmethylated, but we'll come to that in a minute. And global hypomethylation is involved with inflammaging, so increased inflammation. The genes are turned on that make us more inflamed, which is crazy. It increases Alzheimer's disease, it increases the risk of metabolic disease, heart disease, and cancer. So basically, previously, those genes that coded for those illnesses would be more likely to be silenced, but as we age, they become activated. So a great example of this, I love this, is the agouti mouse experiments, which was by some very famous scientists by Gertel and Waterman. And basically, the agouti mouse gene, when it's turned on, it makes the mouse obese, diabetic, increased risk of cancer, basically like all the diseases of old age. But when that gene is silenced, you have this like healthy brown mouse you can see there on the right. So what they discovered is that by feeding these unhealthy mice methyl donors, so actually things like folate, B12 and choline, and also methyl adaptogens like soya, that they switched off this bad gene and they had offspring, so their children were these healthy type of mice. And this was the first time that scientists showed that you could alter your genetic expression. We used to think that genes were like set, and now we realize we could actually modulate them, switching them on and switching them off. So since then, science has moved on even more, and it's kind of cool that you can actually test your DNA methylation. So there are tests. I've highlighted here My DNA Age, because this is actually based on the Steve Horvath clock. So Steve Horvath was the kind of eminent scientist in discovering, or like developing, I should say, this DNA methylation testing. So in 2011, he came up with this clock which looked at DNA methylation over different age groups, and they found that, you know, basically young DNA is completely different to that of, say, someone who's 80. And just by looking at your DNA, they can tell how old you are biologically, which is kind of interesting. You may have heard of these tests before. So the interesting thing, or one of the many interesting things that came out of this research is in 2021, Dr. Cara Fitzgerald published a really interesting paper that showed that through modulating methylation, DNA methylation, which we mentioned earlier, through diet alone, reversed age by 3 years, DNA age, methylation age, in 8 weeks. So 3 years, that's a lot. But when you take it into the context, if we completely eradicated cancer from the human race, we would get an extra 2 years life expectancy. So 3 years in 8 weeks is pretty amazing. And the fact that the lifestyle changes were not through supplements, they were all through diet and lifestyle. She did include some herbs, actually, in terms of things like adding turmeric to the diet, adding certain botanical teas, for example. But basically, it wasn't through taking any supplements, and how powerful that can be. So what do we need to actually reverse our age via changing our epigenetics? So number one, we need methyl donors. So I mentioned earlier, when we think back to that diagram where everything is like tightly packed together, here's a wire, I'm going to show you the wire, tightly packed together. That's being held together by methyl groups. So bonds that are methyl groups, which is CH3. So you need methyl donors in your diet to do that. Then also we need something called methyl adaptogens, which I'll come to in a minute. So methyl donors, we're going to just scooch over this very quickly. So they're essentially from our diet. They include nutrients like B12, choline, folate, and betaine. B12 being mainly found in animal products. Choline is rich in eggs. It's also found in flaxseed. Folate is mainly green leafy vegetables. Betaine is found in high levels in beets. But also there's many other methyl donors. So sometimes people get het up or like focused on folic acid or folate and B12, but actually magnesium is a methyl donor. Methionine is a methyl donor. Zinc is a methyl donor. Even biotin is a methyl donor. Although I didn't put that on the list actually. Oh no, I did, B7, there we go. So we need to make sure we're taking in all of these nutrients, and at the end we'll have some time for questions, and I will definitely bring up and talk about MTHFR if you want me to. So the second part of things we can do, and this is where the herbal medicine comes in and the botanical medicine comes in, are methyl adaptogens. So now we have the idea that we need to get the dietary sources of the methyl donors, and that provides the methyl groups that get added onto the DNA to silence the genes from expressing, which is generally a healthy thing. But as you may remember, I mentioned earlier that sometimes with age, certain areas of the DNA actually become hypermethylated, so they become overmethylated, and actually it can silence certain genes you once switched on. So for example, tumor suppressor gene, which is involved in cancer, can sometimes become, well, can always in fact become hypermethylated in bowel cancer and breast cancer. So that gene gets turned off. So what methyl adaptogens do, which is, I think, absolutely amazing, and that we have evolved with these plant chemicals, they actively, when they're eaten in conjunction with methyl donors, they actually actively take off the methyl groups from areas that we don't want hypermethylated. So they allow those genes we want on to be on and those genes we want off to be off, which I think is amazing that plant chemicals are doing this. So this is an overview that you're going to take a look at in your own time, because we can't go over everything in detail. And I'm happy to provide, I'm going to provide one more chart that goes into this in a lot more detail. But this is a list of all the methyl adaptogenic chemicals. And some of these are going to probably be things you've heard about, like quercetin, which is found in things like onions and berries, but it's also found in herbs like Baikal skullcap and nettle and chamomile. We've got resveratrol there, which is found in red wine and berries, but it's also found in polygonum, obviously turmeric, curcumin. We know all about that plant chemical. So these are all different plant chemicals, and this is why it's really important to eat a wide variety. And herbal medicine or herbs tend to have many, many more of these methyl adaptogens and in a more concentrated amount. So just to give common garden chamomile as an example, common garden chamomile actually contains 5 different methyl adaptogens. So it contains apigenin, luteolin, myrcene, kaempferol, and quercetin. So sometimes just encouraging our patients to have herbal tea, obviously botanical medicine, is all going to help their biological age be reversed. Sorry, I'm in New York City here. So the reason I've illustrated this with this slide is because actually I wanted to illustrate how much more concentrated herbs are. So there's a reason why our ancestors started using herbal medicine, and it's because they discovered that herbs actually sped up healing, it aided tissue regeneration, it reduced inflammation, and it's because they contain these really concentrated amounts of these plant chemicals. So to give the example of blueberries, half a cup of blueberries has the same methyl adaptogen quantity as only half a teaspoon of rosemary, so not very much, right? So then we're going to go on to, so that we've sort of, I'm having to rush, I'm afraid, so we've got so much to cover, but now we're going to go straight on to inflammaging. So as well as the epigenetics we've talked about there and how we can modulate that, there's also, with age, we get more inflammation. And we get this increase in inflammatory cytokines, so interleukin-6, IL-1 beta, tumor necrosis factor alpha, MAP kinase, necrosis factor kappa beta, and also increased levels of reactive oxygen species, which is a very damaging free radical that damages our cells and mitochondria. And this happens with age. We all become more inflamed with age, so we must try and combat this to help the signs and symptoms of aging. So there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of herbal medicines that influence bioage via these mechanisms, not just through methyl adaptogens that we mentioned earlier, but also through modulating inflammation. So please refer to this chart in your own time. I've highlighted certain similarities here. The only one I'm going to draw attention to right now is nuclear factor kappa beta, which is highlighted here in blue. And that is a really important marker involved in aging that's increased with age and is involved in essentially all kinds of inflammatory pathways. Lower levels are associated with a younger biological age. Also, interestingly, for you guys who are interested in skin aging, nuclear factor kappa beta is involved in collagen formation as well. So, you know, we want to have low levels so it can actually affect collagen, also affects cell senescence, which is cell death. So, you know, that's just one example of one of these chemicals that's getting suppressed. So we're going to just whiz through some of these herbs in a little bit more detail. So Panax ginseng or Renshen, Korean ginseng, it helps to prevent UV aging, it stimulates collagen formation. As you can see, it reduces all those inflammatory mediators we've been talking about. I'm not going to really be going too much into NAD+ here, but it does increase NAD+. Also activates telomerase. So telomeres are the kind of caps on the end of our DNA that are associated with, well, the smaller they are, the more old your DNA is, so to speak. It's associated with aging. So this actually helps to increase the telomere length. And it's also a DNA methyl adaptogen. Turmeric we've already mentioned. It's really good for photoaging, and it's anti-melanogenic. So you can use it for people who have hyperpigmentation. I've highlighted here IL-17 because we're going to come back to IL-17 later, because this is a really important mediator in autoimmune disease. So this is one to remember for later. But once again, it's good for inflammaging, and it's actually a methyl adaptogen. Reishi. So here I wanted to highlight a couple of things. So reishi, number one, protects fibroblasts in studies. It looks like more than vitamin C. So it's something that helps with collagen production from that point of view. It's also obviously anti-inflammatory, and it scavenges free radicals. I wanted to bring up here that the active ingredient in reishi that does this is the triterpenoids. The reason I mention this is because I see now a lot of reishi products on the market that are like powders, teas, but that's all water soluble. So that definitely will help the immune stimulant, because the polysaccharides stimulate the immune system, but it won't help with the aging. So if you want a good reishi formula for aging, you want to have something that has the triterpenoids. So I would highly recommend a tincture. Okay. Goji berries. So goji berries are kind of the opposite. It's the polysaccharides that are the active ingredient. So there's over 200 polysaccharides in goji berries, and they are protective again to the fibroblasts, and they have a photoprotective effect. The more this plant is researched, this herb, I should say, is researched, we discover that it's acting mostly through the gut, the microbiome. So it's kind of an interesting herb for that reason. So a lot of these anti-inflammatory effects are actually due to gut microbiome modulation, and it has been shown to reduce leaky gut and gut inflammation. Astragalus, another one that we can use for the gut as well, of course, and also rich in polysaccharides. The thing I wanted to highlight in this, apart from, as with the others, it's reducing inflammation and reducing, helping collagen, is it actually is adaptogenic to collagen. So in diseases where you have excess collagen, like scleroderma, it has been shown to normalize or help to normalize the collagen. So you see it as a modulator. Obviously, it's an adaptogenic herb, so that makes sense, but it's kind of interesting from that point of view. Not just pure stimulating, but it will help modulate the collagen. Glucola is another one that helps with like modulation of collagen. So this is a good herb to think of where you want normal modeling of collagen. So for example, if you have someone who's had an operation, they've got a scar, and you want that collagen to heal in a nice normal way, it's actually licensed as a drug in Europe for this reason. They'll use it on wound healing. It's a fantastic herb. It's very safe. It's eaten as a vegetable where it's grown in Southeast Asia, and it's actually been shown to delay cell senescence, so cell death. It also is absolutely fantastic for as a neuroprotective agent. So I use it a lot for brain health, actually. So think of it in terms of whenever you want to stimulate collagen, like say someone has abnormal collagen, like cellulite, or they've got scarring, this is a great herb for that. Now I'm going to come on to a couple of antioxidant herbs that what I see as more strong antioxidant than some of the other herbs. So one is rhodiola. It's really good for that reason for photoaging. It's a really strong antioxidant. And again, I've highlighted IL-7 here because 17, sorry, because it's also good for suppressing those autoimmune markers, which we'll come to later when we talk about psoriasis. It also is really good for the mood, which again we'll come to later, mood, energy, stress. Ginkgo, so everyone who lives in a city and has seen a ginkgo tree, they're very resistant to pollution. So as with rhodiola, I often see these herbs, rhodiola and ginkgo, as like a force field to pollution, because this plant can be exposed to extreme levels of pollution and be totally fine. And why? Because it's great at scavenging free radicals. It's really good for protecting your collagen. helping increase collagen, but also protecting your skin from any damage from UV radiation and pollution. So just in summary here, for age can be partially reversed. The bioage can be altered by changing methylation, but also by reducing inflammation using plant chemicals. We can actually help reverse and protect against photoaging as well and increase collagen production. So I'm going to have to move on, I'm afraid, without questions yet because we are a bit low on time. So we're going to move straight on to botanical medicine and its use in acne. So acne is a common skin complaint. It's associated with inflammation and basically the blocking of the pores, the sebaceous follicles with sebum. It's often associated with the teen years when there's excess sebum, but also can be due to hormonal irregularities that may be increased testosterone in PCOS, for example. It can also be linked to insulin resistance and high luteinizing hormone. So what to do about it? So basically, I'm going to go through the thought process of how we would treat acne with botanical medicine. And then at the end, I'm going to give you like a formula, a basic formula as well. That isn't in the notes. So if you want to screenshot that or take a photo, please do that. So if it's polycystic ovary disease, we need to, or polycystic ovary syndrome. So the difference is one is associated with a hormone imbalance. So the disease is high androgen, whereas polycystic ovary syndrome, there is not necessarily high androgen. So what we want to do is normalize ovarian function. So a great way to do that is with peony, licorice, and cinnamon. We want to reduce the excess androgens if they're present, because androgens are good for drive, for energy. So please, I would not recommend just reducing androgens unless you know they're elevated, especially in women, because it can affect their mood and everything. But then if they are elevated, saw palmetto is a great herb for reducing androgens, and peony to a degree as well. If there's excess luteinizing hormone, so you often get these very long cycles in PCOS, and that's due to this long luteal phase and excess LH. Black cohosh is really good for that. And we might think of that as a menopause herb, but guess what? It helps menopause because spikes in LH is what gives you the hot flash. If there's no PCOS, but there's still hormonal acne, so you have a patient who does not have polycystic ovaries, they have, however, breakouts before their period, then I would recommend Vitex, or you may have heard of it as Tasteberry. And I recommend 1 ml, so that's 20 drops in the morning for 3 months. You do not give that herb if they have PCOS, so just please be aware of that. Very good though for other forms of breakouts around the period, especially like teenage girls. You can even give it to teenage boys actually. If you have cystic acne, I would highly recommend looking if there's a food intolerance. I see that quite often with patients, or any other cause of underlying inflammation. So there may be dysbiosis, which means an imbalance in the bacteria of the gut. We always treat the lymphatic system in cystic acne. Calendula, or marigold, its other name, is specific for cystic acne. Other lymphatic herbs that are helpful include echinacea, poke root, cleavers, which is also known as gallium. As I mentioned, dysbiosis can be a major thing in acne. And in fact, there's been studies that showed supplementation with bifidobacteria is very helpful at reducing inflammation. So, and we traditionally often will use herbs that contain berberine. So obviously Coptis, you've heard of in Chinese medicine. Also anything from the Berberis species, so Berberis vulgaris, also Mahonia, are all very good herbs for acne, especially if there's like damp heat, which we'll come to when we talk about energetics. So treating the underlying gut dysbiosis is very important. Also some kind of immune modulator. I find echinacea to be very effective. Also allicin, which is a garlic extract. So pure allicin is very helpful also in acne. We often give, or in my case, always give some kind of blood cleansing in herbal medicine. We call that a depurative herb. And herbs that are great for this are burdock, yellow dock, and also sarsaparilla, or it's also known as smilex. These have all got Chinese names that you're going to be getting. Lymphatic system we've already really talked about. Liver support is a must. So yellow dock and burdock are also liver support. They stimulate bile production as well. Dandelion root, milk thistle, the berberis species are also good for the liver. Diuretics, I don't think, I put it here because you can use diuretics in acne, but it's definitely not the most important thing to put in the formula. It's more useful for eczema. We also want to treat the underlying inflammation with cystic acne. There's a close link between bacterial stimulation of Th17, which I'm going to mention a few times during this talk. So Th17 is the autoimmune pathway, and I'm going to show you a little diagram on this later. And it is basically the bacteria that causes acne seems to trigger that. So there is like it's not autoimmune as such, but on a local level, it's almost like there's that chronic inflammation that's linked to autoimmune is there, right? And so it's interesting because guess what? Good old-fashioned peony, we mentioned earlier, is really good at reducing Th17, and that's why it's also good for autoimmune disease. So another good reason why peony might be in an acne formula. Also, Smilex does that, turmeric, licorice, calendula. Okay. So topical, we'll go over very briefly. Keep the pores open. Salicylic acid is really helpful for that, and it also helps to modulate the microbiome of the skin. Nicotinamide topically is great. I like licorice topically on the cysts. It's like a natural steroid. So people who want to get those steroid shots into their cystic acne, get them to use licorice instead. Allicin gel, which is obviously the active ingredient in garlic I mentioned earlier. Tea tree oil, blue light, topical probiotics. So I will pause just now to go into this in a bit more detail, because I'm going to go into this with psoriasis and rosacea as well, and eczema to a degree. So Lactobacillus sakhi is the bacteria in kimchi, and with most skin disorders, there's a dysbiosis of the skin, an imbalance in the bacteria of the skin. And I started using this several years ago because there's a lot of research on this and sinus problems. So people with chronic sinus problems, if you give them Lactobacillus sakhi in their nasal passages, just by putting your finger with a bit of the bacteria in your nose, it helps to get rid of this kind of chronic sinus problem. Now, we know that a lot of the bacteria in our face hang out in our nose, right? And I saw a paper that was talking about this and skin disorder and how it helped modulate the microbiome. So I started experimenting on it with certain patients with seborrheic dermatitis and also with rosacea, and it was like a miracle. It was so effective at helping them. So I now use it a lot in my practice, and it really does work. So this is a great tip. It's not really written about that much, I don't think. So you just can buy this online in a powder form, and you get the patient to inoculate the nose twice a day. And then I normally get them to mix it with a touch of water, obviously no chlorine in the water, and just put it on their face before they put their other things on top of it. Just a side note, cheek acne is more likely to be associated with a fungal overgrowth. So if you're seeing someone with cheek acne, you might want to put them on an anti-yeast candida protocol, which is very common in acne, by the way. Nutritional support, I really like a product called Acneutral, which is by Designs for Health, and that has zinc, vitamin A, selenium, chromium. Chromium is especially important if you have PCOS. Fiber is also really a really vital thing, to have adequate fiber if you have an acne patient. What I normally do on the first consult is I ask them their diet, and I calculate, literally do the math, and I'll find out what their shortfall is. And if they're, say, short by 10 grams, I'll get them to maybe have a couple of tablespoons of chia seed a day. The reason is because you get something called enterohepatic recycling, which it means your liver will detox whatever it's detoxing, hormones possibly, or definitely, any other toxins via the bile, and it goes into the gut. Now, most of it actually gets reabsorbed, which is why if you're doing like a drug test for like cannabis, which is detox through the liver, you can test positive for 2 weeks, right? Because it's this recycling. So fiber is really important, because what it does is it binds to those excess hormones, and then your body can like poop them out essentially. The other thing about fibre is it increases butyrate, and butyrate is really so high butyrate is associated with low inflammation. So with all skin conditions, high butyrate is a good thing. So yeah, never forget about fibre, because I think I've never seen, apart from maybe the odd vegan patient, it's most patients don't have enough fibre in their diet. Okay, this is an example of a acne formula, and I'm going to just leave this on the screen for a second because I'm going to move straight forward because we've got so much to go through. So we've got an immune modulator with echinacea, poke root as an immune stimulant. I always have echinacea and poke root in every formula I've ever done for acne because they work so fantastic. Same with burdock and yellow dock. I think that's in every single formula I've ever done. Peony, licorice, Berberis vulgaris. So that's a great formula there. All right, so moving on to eczema. So eczema is normally associated with like an allergic type person. So these people have, you know, more likely to have IgE sensitivities to foods and environmental. They have infiltration of certain immune cells into the skin, involved with inflammation. So things like macrophages, also eosinophils. It seems to be more prevalent in cities, less common in the countryside. And there's like the whole hygiene hypothesis who you may have come across. It seems that when people aren't exposed to like germs and dirt and stuff like that when they're little, it seems to dysregulate their immune system. So if you have any little ones in your life, get them out there in the dirt. So as eczema is associated with a lot of allergies, I would highly recommend if your patient hasn't been tested for food allergies or environmental allergies for that matter, get them tested, because it makes a huge difference to how effective the treatment is if they're avoiding those triggers. Obviously, we want to give antihistamines. There's a lot of histamine, itching, activation of the mast cells, degranulation of the mast cells. So we want mast cell stabilizers and antihistamines. So herbs like nettle, I'm sure you've heard of, rich in quercetin, Chinese skullcap, which is also rich in quercetin, but it also has bicolin, is great for stabilizing mast cells. Ginkgo, people don't think of ginkgo as a mast cell stabilizer, but it's actually one of the best out there. The ginkgo is a great one to think about with your allergic type patients. Rosemary, again, not one that people think about, although I have seen it actually in some formulations people are making now. Really good mast cell stabilizer. Chamomile, we mentioned earlier, has got so many different chemicals in it, is really good for reducing histamine. Feverfew, another herb people don't think of, is a great herb for allergies. Isatus, or Fang Feng, is another one that helps reduce histamine. And Hishu Wu, which contains resveratrol, also helps to stabilize mast cells. So sometimes with eczema patients, I might start off the formula with 2 or 3 antihistamines, because when they're coming in and they're in that aggravated state and they're itching so much, you really want to stop that cycle. As you go on in the treatment, you might reduce it and you may end up just with 1 antihistamine herb in there. But don't think there's not really too much of a good thing when it comes to suppressing histamine, because as well as histamine, all these herbs I've just mentioned reduce other inflammatory mediators. And really you want to just break that cycle, because with histamine, it's a positive feedback loop, which means that it just stimulates more mast cell deregulation and more mast cell degranulation. So you want to really stop that cycle. Again, as with acne, we give blood purifying herbs. So we call them alteratives in eczema for some reason. But basically, there's 2 main groups. There's root alteratives and leafy alteratives. And the root ones are have more of an action on the liver and the gallbladder and the gut. And the leafy ones are a bit more on the lymphatic system. They're a bit more diuretic. Diuretic herbs are very important in eczema because there's often poor elimination. Often when you ask eczema patients, they might say they don't sweat that much. That's quite a common complaint they come back with. So things like burdock, yellow dock, sarsaparilla, which is smilex, mahonia, berberis, coptis, dandelion root. These are all blood purifying herbs. Leafy ones include figwort, which is also known as scrofularia, cleavers, red clover, Heartsease pansies, which I don't know if you've ever seen. They people in their window boxes, they grow everywhere. Nettle, good old nettle's great for eczema, and fumitory. We must give some kind of liver support with eczema because often there's we need to support the detox pathways, even just from the point of view histamine is detoxed through the liver. So Mahonia, Berberis vulgaris, or any of the Berberis species, yellow dock again, burdock again, dandelion root again. And dandelion root we'll come to is also a liver blood tonic, which is important in eczema. I'm not going to go over lymphatic herbs again, because we've been over those. Diuretic we've also mentioned. Again, as with acne, we want to treat any dysbiosis. Always think in terms of the energetics. I didn't bring this up in acne, but I'm going to bring it up now. So if there was, say, damp heat, you might want to use herbs like Coptis or Berberis species or Mahonia as your dysbiotic kind of clearing herb. Whereas if there was damp cold, you may like to use herbs like oregano or allium or cinnamon, which are more like warming. Obviously, as I just mentioned, you want to treat any underlying energetic imbalance. Dry skin can be associated with a liver blood deficiency. So some of the herbs you've already mentioned, like nettle, is a blood tonic, and it's a liver blood tonic, as is dandelion root. Obviously, I haven't put this here, but we could use peony as well. If there was, say, damp heat, we'd be using definitely some of the draining herbs. So the Baikal skullcap, the Coptis, the Mahonia, the Berberis, so some kind of bitter herb, right? If there was itchy skin, which is like maybe a wind disharmony pattern, we might want to use some of those antihistamine herbs we mentioned earlier, actually help with that. So things like Isatus, which is Fang Feng, or chamomile can be really helpful there. But just to note that often with like a wind disharmony pattern, there is an underlying liver blood deficiency still. So still don't forget to treat that as well. With eczema, we obviously treat the nervous system. We all know that eczema is aggravated by stress. So I've given some examples of herbs that are very good with eczema, which is oat straw, which is known as Avena sativa, verbena, and also lemon balm. So here's the diagram I was talking about earlier. So this is showing you what branch of the immune system is activated in eczema. And I'm going to share this also with psoriasis so you can see the difference. So here we have the pathway. I'm going to highlight it. This pathway is activated in eczema, but also allergic diseases. And you have interleukin 4 that is high, and also interleukin 13. Okay, so what we do is we want to push the immune system in the opposite direction. I wonder if I can change the color. Wait a minute. Okay, here we go. So we want to push the immune system in this direction, and that's herbs like astragalus. Our good old friend astragalus is a herb that boosts Th1 pathway. So astragalus and eczema go quite nicely together, but also Baikal skullcap helps this process, and berberine and ginger. Also, we want to just reduce inflammation in general. So we want to reduce all these inflammatory mediators, especially IL-4 and IL-13, because as we can see, that's this pathway, as we've already mentioned. And things like I mentioned earlier, feverfew, turmeric, he shou wu, Baikal skullcap are all herbs that help suppress inflammation. So don't forget about inflammation. So topical treatment of eczema is really important. So eczema is basically infected in most of the cases. In fact, 90% of all patients with atopic dermatitis have Staph aureus. Okay, so even though it doesn't look infected, it is infected. So what I would recommend is using some kind of antimicrobial topically, and actually my absolute favorite is oak bark, which is kind of not in fashion, but it really works, and it's in all the old herbal textbooks, but I guess it's not thought of nowadays. So you basically want to do wet wrapping. If you haven't heard of wet wrapping before, you make a strong decoction of the herb, in this case oak bark, and you're putting these bandages into like a strong tea, and you're wrapping the affected areas, and you're leaving that on for between an hour and 3 hours. And then you're going to remove the bandages, and you're going to possibly put some anti-inflammatory herbs, like licorice is a good one. And then you're going to use a non-allergenic moisturizer. Really important to speak to the patient. With eczema, there's a disrupted skin barrier, and part of the treatment, the reason topical treatment is so important is because by getting rid of the Staph aureus, it helps to restore the skin barrier. And again, this is where like possibly using the topical probiotics can be good as well, because you're trying to push the bacteria of the skin to a more healthy type of bacteria. Listen to your patients, because you might find one patient does great with shea butter, and then another one they're deadly allergic to it. Or I mentioned calendula earlier. If you're allergic to the daisy family, that could be a horrible reaction for you. So try to listen to your patients, let them guide you if they know there's a moisturizer they can use. In terms of supplements, I've listed them here. I'm just going to highlight GLA and vitamin A for a second, because GLA is common, well, it's common. About 4% of the population can't make it. And guess what? They tend to always be eczema patients. So giving a high dose GLA, which stands for gamma-linolenic acid, in those patients, you see miraculous results. And it's every time I have a patient who clearly can't make it and they respond to that, it's like pretty cool. So they're the people who have incredibly dry skin all over, and they're always complaining of dry skin. Vitamin A helps boost something called T regulator cells. So I'm going to talk about it with psoriasis as well. So it has an immune modulating effect, and most people are deficient in animal form of vitamin A, which is the retinoids. So when I was in a clinic once where we tested every single person for vitamin A, I would say 90% were deficient. And that's how common. So definitely think about that. And then also, zinc, because it gets used up so much in eczema. So it's going to whiz on. This is the eczema formula. So nettle, Baikal skullcap, burdock, yellow dock, lemon balm, isatus, and licorice. Okay, I'm going to keep on going. So we're going to move on to psoriasis now. So psoriasis, you can read this in your own time, but I'm going to highlight just a couple of things. So psoriasis is involved in a different immune branch. So it's involved with stimulation of IL-17 and 23, which is different to eczema. And it's where you have activated T1 and T17. So the treatment is actually quite different. This is important to know. And then this is just a point about dysbiosis, and read this in your leisure, but basically there is quite severe dysbiosis often in psoriasis, and you get this this chemical, which is FOXP3, that basically is low in people who have psoriasis, and that means that they have low levels of these T regulator cells. So what we want to do is increase bacteroidetes, we want to increase butyrate to help these patients. Okay. So as with eczema, we want to modulate the immune system, but in eczema we had the Th2 was dominant. In psoriasis is Th1 and Th17. So I personally avoid astragalus in psoriasis patients for this reason, because actually astragalus increases Th1. So actually I tend to avoid it, but berberine is better. One of the best things is things like peony, smilex, turmeric, licorice, and milk thistle. These are all immune modulators that help to suppress Th1. You still want to reduce all those cytokines, but the only slight difference is that we really want to focus here on IL-17 and 23. So if you remember in those first slides, I kept pointing out to you guys, I said, look at this herb, it expresses IL-17. And the reason I wanted to highlight that is for when we came to psoriasis, so we remember that's good for autoimmune disease. So some herbs that help with that include Rehmannia, Lonicera, feverfew, turmeric, Qixu Wu, Baikal skullcap, Andrographis, and Boswellia. So obviously we'd use the correct herb that was correct energetically. Not everybody needs a really bitter herb like Andrographis, of course. We've mentioned dysbiosis, and it makes perfect sense why this is such a problem with psoriasis, because guess what? Th17, which is the autoimmune pathway, is activated by bacteria and fungal infection. So always look at any underlying dysbiosis. I've never seen a psoriasis patient where this hasn't been a case, so I imagine it will be for you the same. We can use things like Berberis species as before. Mahonia is specific for psoriasis, Coptis, allicin, oregano, all the ones we were talking about earlier. Again, boost bacteroidetes with beans and fiber. Liver support is super important. Every single person with psoriasis needs to be on 1, 2, 3 liver support herbs. Milk thistle is a must. Every patient with psoriasis I see is on milk thistle. Every patient I see with psoriasis is on turmeric, which is curcuma. And every single patient is on probably burdock and yellow dock, and then almost certainly they're on Berberis vulgaris or Mahonia. So they're often on all of those different herbs that are all acting on the liver. Steroid-like herbs are also very important. I would include at least one of these herbs in every formula with psoriasis. So that could be a herb like Rehmannia, or licorice, or wild yam, or smilex. And again, you would use the appropriate herb depending on the overall case and the individual person and the energetics, etc. Also, as with most skin conditions, it's made worse by stress. And I wanted to highlight when we talked earlier about some of those anti-aging herbs, rhodiola I mentioned was good for stress, and it also reduces IL-17. However, Panax, ginseng, and reishi boost the IL-17. They're immune stimulants, right? So we may not want to give those herbs in psoriasis patients. So might want to go instead for a nervine herb like oat straw, or adaptogenic herb like licorice that is more anti-inflammatory. All right, it is harder to treat than eczema, and by all means, take note of these supplements. I'm not going to go into these in detail now, but you need to really throw everything at a psoriasis patient. So I would never skip giving each one of those supplements to the psoriasis patient. So just to reiterate, as discussed before, that psoriasis is a disease of IL-23 and IL-17, which is type 3 inflammation, whereas eczema is atopic and is a disease of Th2, type 2 inflammation, and is associated with IL-4 and 13 pathways. These are different pathways. So although there is some crossover with some of the herbs, you must think about it as a different disease. So this is an example, whoops, I've spelled psoriasis wrong, of a psoriasis formula. So peony, that would be immune modulating, reducing Th17. It's also anti-inflammatory, boosts liver blood, etc. Turmeric, again, it's going to be blocking that IL-17 and IL-23. It's also good for clearing stagnation. It modulates the immune system. It's good for the liver, anti-inflammatory, of course. Burdock and yellow dock, both great herbs. They're both blood purifiers, liver support, gut support. I haven't gone too much into the detail, but they do actually really modulate the microbiome as well. Milk thistle is another immune modulating herb, even though people don't really always think of it like that, but it does help to modulate Th17. It's really good for autoimmune disease for that reason. Also increases glutathione, liver support. Licorice is reducing inflammation, steroid-like, and adrenal support, and Smilex also reducing inflammation. So I think we might have to stop after rosacea, guys, because I think we might run out of time. So we're moving on to rosacea. So rosacea is associated with the Dermadex mite. I like to treat this topically with camphor essential oil. So Dermadex mite, basically in some individuals, can cause inflammation to the mite itself, or possibly the bacteria it carries. There's often a disruption of the microbiome of the skin. And in fact, there's been studies that show there's an increased amount of Staphylococcus epidermis. And so as I discussed earlier, I would use the microbiome treatment I was talking about. So after you've used camphor for 2 weeks, I would recommend doing the topical probiotic with the Lactobacillus sacchi. There's systemic inflammation. So I would always treat the underlying systemic inflammation. So that's why when you see rosacea, you can see people who get better and worse, better and worse, because their body's changing and their inflammatory levels are changing. Dysbiosis is a really common thing to see in these patients. And in fact, there was a study recently that showed that about half of the patients had SIBO, and once they treated the SIBO, the rosacea improved, right? So that again is probably to do with the systemic inflammation that the SIBO is causing. So those of you who don't know, SIBO stands for small intestinal bacterial overgrowth. And again, please feel free to read my notes at your leisure. So this is just a quick case history. I don't have many case histories because I don't take photos of people, but these are the ones I happen to have. So this patient, you can see here on the left, she had rosacea and perioral dermatitis, and also she had eczema, but that's not pictured. And then on the right there, her skin is cleared up. So basically what we did with her is we gave her, she actually had high levels of heavy metals, actually, really high levels of mercury. She had poor energy, poor memory, she had lifelong constipation. I put low sex drive, but actually that came out later in her case. So what we actually did was we gave her herbs to help detox. So I gave her dandelion root, milk thistle, artichoke, gentian, and I gave her binders. This was for the heavy metals. So the herbs were like pushing by stimulating the liver and the bile, and the binders like bind to the metals and help you essentially poop them out. So I gave her something called IMD, which feel free to look up, and pectin. And then I actually gave her Gutta Cola, which you mentioned earlier, because it helps protect the brain from heavy metals, and also lion's mane for that reason. So at her follow-up, she had improved energy and memory, and that's when she mentioned the low sex drive, and I added Schisandra. And we were waiting to see her blood homocysteine, so because we were concerned about methylation. Her bowel movements were better, her skin was improving, and we added in gamma-linolenic acid because she was one who had the body eczema, very dry skin, and we did camphor topically for the rosacea. So kind of fast forward to more or less now, her heavy metals had gone down within 3 months. Her skin was 95% clear. Her sex drive had improved by 60% since we added Schisandra. And then she decided to come off her IUD. So I actually added in some Vitex and some Mudam-P. Because she was having some period pains. That's why I gave the Mudam-P. So the follow-up after that, she had no period pains, sex drive was perfect, skin, mood, energy, good, everything was perfect on that front. The skin, the dryness in the skin, the body eczema had completely gone with the GLA. But at this point, we discovered that she still was using magnesium for constipation. And at the first consult, I said to her, I think you should get tested for SIBO, and she never got tested. Anyhow, she did at this point, and guess what? It was positive. So we just began treatment a month ago, and I'm seeing her on Monday, so we'll see how she's doing. This is some information for you to look at in your leisure, I think. Okay, so we have got onto infection, great. So the reason we're going to talk about infection, okay, I'm just going to scooch over this case history because I'm going to focus on all infections. So this is someone with herpes, right? So she had recurrent, horrible herpes outbreaks, and she was like housebound, and she was getting them like every few weeks. It was really, she was quite sick, and she got referred to me by a facialist friend of mine. So we gave her, and she had also frequent migraines, and she was stressed. Her dad had died, and her mother had dementia, and she was perimenopausal. Her initial mix, we gave her St. John's wort, echinacea, lemon balm, Rehmannia, Dong Quai, because we're trying to see if we get her periods coming again, licorice, dantian, and peony. And it cleared up, needless to say, the skin cleared up. And I'm just going to highlight that actually at this point, she's not on any antivirals apart from a dropper bottle of licorice and a dropper bottle of lemon balm that she takes as needed. And now we're much more focused, the formula, on her stress control. So we're giving her things like Bucloram, St. John's wort, astragalus. So the formula now is less about antivirals. So I just wanted to point that out. You may not need someone to take that long term. So just summarizing some treating of infections. So we have viral infections like the herpes, also verrucas, which you can get on your feet from swimming pools and the like. molluscum. Obviously, kids tend to get that. And you can take internal antiviral, so like lemon balm, as I gave this patient, licorice, again, like I gave that patient, St. John's wort, is anti-enveloped viruses. Thuja is another herb. We may give immune modulators and boosters like echinacea, astragalus, reishi, elderberry, calendula. And you may have noticed with that patient, if you were eagle-eyed, in her last formula, I was actually giving her astragalus. So even though I wasn't actively giving her so many antivirals, I was still giving her an immune modulator. You can give topical immune stimulants. So definitely with things like molluscum, I do this, or with the verrucas, we might give topical oregano oil or oregano oil or licorice or calendula or tea tree. These are all antivirals. And again, we always treat the person holistically. So we treat the underlying cause of stress. So we treat the poor nutrition. We treat the toxicity. So with bacterial infections, for example, staph, we mentioned earlier, Staph aureus is associated with eczema and also impetigo. Also, we may be using it with acne or also wound care. So antibiotics include things like allicin. I love allicin gel. Also, berberine containing herbs, thymol and carvacol containing herbs like oregano and thyme. And again, immune modulators, and you can use topical, as well as internal antibiotics, you can use topical antibiotics. And lastly, I'm going to scoot onto fungal infections, so things like Candida and Tinea. So we can use antifungal herbs, like again, allicin, berberine, containing herbs, thymol, carvacol, tabubewa, also immune modulators. We again treat the person holistically. So I think we've got some questions and we've got very little time. So I'm sorry I had to whiz through it, but as you can see, there's a lot to cover. So let me have a look where the messages are. Okay, I missed the example of the acne formula slide. Okay, I will share it at the end. Let me just put this back for you guys. Acne. Bear with me a second. Someone wanted to look at the acne slide, and I can actually send these afterwards as well, because I don't want to. You know, oh, there we go. That was acne, wasn't it? No, it's eczema. Sorry, maybe this isn't the best use of my time. There we go, acne. Okay, and I'm going to send also. I can send these through separately. Okay. Yeah, you will get a copy of the slides. I did send that today, so a bit late, I'm afraid. Could you please repeat the treatment for sinus issues? Okay, yeah, Lactobacillus sakei. It is the bacteria in kimchi, and you can get that. Just Google that, and you'll see there's a couple of companies that make that. Is wild yam san yao? You know what? I do not know all the pinyin names off by heart. I just know Latin and common. But I'm going to provide a handout that I didn't actually send yet, which is I did collate all those together, so you guys can refer to that. Okie dokie. How do you dose the formulas? Okay, I didn't. Yeah, so I normally do tinctures, and so I would give 5 ml 3 times a day. Of those formulas, but I didn't give the amounts. I mean, I guess I could add the amounts afterwards. Okay, great. So I think that's all the questions, and we managed to do it in time. So I'm going to send also, as well as the slides, which you guys will have, is I'm going to add a separate one with the pinyin names, and I'm also going to put the formulas with amounts. I mean, I'm not one who like gives the same formula more than once ever, so I would still you know, really like you to like think about that individual in front of you, because each person is like a unique individual, and you can modify these depending on that person's body and their energetics. So sorry that it was so quick, but we had a lot of stuff to get through. So any more questions, please feel free to chat and ask them. I know it was an awful lot of information to get through. How do you take notes for a treatment, on paper or computer? I personally use computer. Thank you so much, Future Slide. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's probably, oh, one of the small questions, 6 new messages. Okay. Oh yeah. Okay, no, just thanking. Okay, great. Yes, so someone did put Shan Yao, Chinese yam. So Dioscorea species, it doesn't matter whether it's wild yam, Chinese yam, they all have the same energetic effect. Steroidal saponins, anti-inflammatory. Okay, great. I didn't think I'd get through all that, so I'm really glad we got through it. I did miss some details off, but hopefully when you get a chance to read the slides, you'll get all that extra information. And I wish I could see your faces. It's the last thing. And thank you so much for Dr. East for bringing us all together again. And really good luck, all the other presenters. All the best. Oh, there is still more time. Oh, it's 10 minutes. Gosh, I didn't realize there is actually 10 minutes left because it said I've been talking for an hour on my computer. So I guess there might be some more time for questions if you guys have questions. Is Lactobacillus sakyi for sinus? Yes, it can be used for sinus problems. It's actually excellent. So if you have a patient with recurrent sinus infections, oh, okay, we've got another question. You want to inoculate the nose with a Lactobacillus sakyi, and basically what it does is it helps to stop that kind of chronic cycle of infections. It works really well. I used to have terrible sinus problems and I don't anymore, and that's because of, I'm sure because of that change in the microbiome of my sinus. So Tim asks, how can you tell if herbs are good quality? So I personally get all my herbs from my herbal supplier. It is actually based in Europe, and they are under slightly more stringent regulations over there because it's different. Here it's not always as easy to get good quality herbs, but I do, yeah, and you know, when I manufacture stuff that I sell to the public, I also get it made in Europe, and I test it all as well, because legally a herb doesn't have to have an active ingredient level. It just has to have the species, the correct species. And as we know, like, you could have some nasty dried up old thyme sitting on your shelf and it has no active ingredient of thymol left, you know, because it's evaporated. So, and that would pass the test here, unfortunately. So I think how you would tell is, I mean, I can tell for sure through taste and you know, like, I could buy a tincture in a shop and tell you whether it's good quality just by tasting it, because obviously I'm a herbalist, I know what I'm doing over the years. But yeah, ask around, ask your friend. I mean, you're welcome to email me. Actually, I didn't think my contact details might be at the end. So yeah, my email actually is, you can just use my personal email if you like, which is my name @gmail.com. Another question, do you treat perioral dermatitis as acne or eczema? Great question. So I would definitely, yeah, here we go, contact details. And you can actually email me also at my Gmail, which is danielaturley@gmail.com. So yeah, perioral dermatitis, there's nearly always some kind of inflammation in the body and often a food allergy. So it's normally you're doing a lot of things at once. So you're avoiding any food allergies, treating any inflammation, treating dysbiosis, treating the topical microbiome, doing it all kind of at once. It can be difficult to treat, but I've so far, touch wood, succeeded in all cases. That can be done. Okay, I feel like you've got another talk to come. So if there's no more questions, any other questions? I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, so I think we are probably more or less at time. I don't know if there's any other questions. And yeah, just be aware. Okay, one more. What do you use to test the herb quality? So that is tested by my to be fair, it's tested by my manufacturer in Europe. So it's normally tested using, thin layer chromatography, which is like giving a biological fingerprint of the herb. Off topic, anything for hypothyroidism, it depends on the cause, right? Is it just poor thyroid conversion? So often with age, people can get, T4 gets converted to T3 at the periphery, so in the liver and the tissues. And often people, with age, that is less effective. So that might be due to adrenal stress, or it could be due to toxicity. That happens quite a lot. So you might, in that case, give the herb like ashwagandha, and you might give things like iodine. Tyrosine is very good, and you might work on the adrenals a lot. But if you had, say, underactive thyroid due to Hashimoto's, which is an autoimmune thyroid disease, completely different treatment. Then you might give some of those herbs you mentioned earlier, like peony and licorice and turmeric, and it's more about modulating the immune system. Allergy to calendula. What else am I allergic to? I'm not sure what that question is. Do you have a line of formulas ready to be dispensed? I do have a couple of products that are available to the public that I developed during COVID, essentially. There is immune supplement and an immune tonic that's, I think, pretty good, in my opinion. In my office, I have a full dispensary. So I have over 250 herbs, and I formulate for each patient, and I use tinctures, and we use much higher doses in Western herbal medicine. So we might give, or we do give, like 5 mils of tincture 3 times a day. So actually, this is my own formula I'm taking right now, just on my desk. And that will only last for 2 weeks, that whole giant bottle. So it's not dropper amounts, it's like quite a high dose. Okay, so we've got Sandra coming up next. So I don't want to be answering a question when she is probably keen to get going. So thanks for all your fantastic questions, and please feel free to reach out if you wish. If you have more questions, I'm always happy to teach. All the best, everybody. Have a great weekend.
Our next 2 presenters are going to share with you something pretty powerful. It's a technology that helps the body produce more stem cells naturally. How does that sound? Well, it enhances radiance in the face, longevity, reverses aging, and so much more. If you haven't heard of these AccuPatches, then I'm thrilled to have you be introduced to them, because they can be powerful in your practice and in your life. I know that after the last time I heard these 2 women speak, I went and bought myself some more of these AccuPatches. So without further ado, I want to bring onto the Radiant Aging stage Dame Sandra Biskin and Dr. Lindsay to talk to you a little bit more about the technology of stem cell patches and how you can use them. Ladies, welcome to the stage.
Wonderful to be here, Dr. East. Thank you. Really great. And Lindsay, you there, babe?
Hi.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Great. I love the fact that this, Dr. East, that you have called this summit Radiant Aging, because obviously when we have that many revolutions around the sun, and we keep having them, that we are in a process of aging. However, it does not have to be what it used to be. For instance, in about 2 months, I'm going to be turning 70 years old. And because of the stem cell, because of the stem cell patches, the LifeWave stem cell patches, my skin, I don't know if you can really see this or not, but my skin is radiant, literally radiant. It glows. And when I don't have makeup on, I look like I've got a porcelain skin, because it's just, you know, those dolls that you see, they're porcelain and they just shine. My whole face just shines. And it's really interesting. My hair, I just had it cut short about 2 months ago. And now it's like, what happened? Same with the nails. You know this, Lindsay. When you start reactivating your stem cells that have gone to sleep, that have started to degrade. And by the way, our stem cells do start degrading at 18. Now, don't panic because we start off as one stem cell. But, you know, when I first heard that, I thought, of course we did. One stem cell, one drop of blood. And from there, we were bursting with life and growth and energy. And, you know, when you have a baby in your life, it's just like, whoa, you love being around it because that baby is expanding on a cellular level in front of our eyes. Have you ever felt that, Lindsay? It's like, there it is, right?
All the energy, yes.
All the energy, all the growth, so much growth, everything changes. And that is primarily because of stem cells. So the stem cells is what grows us into the human beings that we are. And for some unknown reason, at the age of 18, they do start degrading. And then so a lot of people, when they get to in their 40s, they go, what happened? Why have I got crow's feet? Why am I, you know, not being able to do the exercise that I used to do when I was in my 20s? Why? And of course, the answer is so simple. And most people just don't realize this. It's simply because our stem cells have started to degrade and new ones are not being made. So this is like, okay, so we're not having new stem cells made. This is just a biological scientific fact. It's not something that we've made up. It's just a fact. And so then a scientist and inventor, David Schmidt, who is the CEO and owner of the LifeWave technology, apparently he was taken to his relations when he was a teenager. And at that stage, he was still, you know, inventing and into biology and chemistry and everything. And he saw his relations and he went, no, that's not meant to be happening. They were very gray. They were hunched over. They had canes and walkers, and they were in a lot of pain. He could see the pain on their faces, and he's looking at them, and it's like, this is not meant to be happening. And he said there and then, aging is not natural, it's a disease. And guess what? He's actually proven that, and so many other scientists have proven it too. I don't remember the scientist who did this, but Lindsay, there was a scientist who actually put one cell into a petri dish and kept that cell alive for years and years and years. I mean, decades actually. And on one day, the cell technician who was in the lab didn't clean the environment, didn't clean the fluid that beautiful cell was sitting in. And the next day that cell was dead. This is after decades of being alive, bursting with energy, acting as though it was still 100% perfect until the environment got corrupted. Now, you and I both know, and that's you as in all of us, we all know that our food supply, water supply, and air supply has been corrupted, and that there's a lot of things going on at the moment that is making it difficult for a human being to adapt quickly enough to keep staying younger, longer, healthier, stronger, right? So we're in an adaptation stage. We as humans have to adapt quite quickly now. We have to adapt to everything that's being put upon us, everything that we're eating, drinking, breathing. We're going to need to be stronger, and we're going to have a stronger immune system. So there's a phase now that we're in that the strong will survive, and those of us who can't adapt will certainly not. And this scientist has worked this out. In fact, he brought out the stem cell activation patches just before COVID was released. And I thought, wow, isn't that incredible that he's given us something that's going to strengthen our immune system. Plus, for 20 years before that, he's been doing other patches that are doing a similar thing. Like, Lindsay, I don't know if you want to talk about glutathione or not, but he's responsible for creating a glutathione patch that unlike the injection that is $1,700 for one injection and lasts for maybe 7 minutes to an hour in your system. The glutathione patch, this one little thing, tells the liver to activate the production of glutathione for 72 hours. And that's improving the immune system by up to 300%. So by putting on one glutathione patch every 3 days, you are maximizing the effects of your own immune system. And of course, that's helping to protect you from all of these things. Lindsay, please feel free to jump in anytime, because I'm so passionate about this technology that I could probably talk for 3 hours.
I know you can. It's okay. I will definitely jump in.
Okay, good. So I guess the crux of this whole thing is that we do have a USA, which I'm thrilled about, a USA scientist who has seen the writing on the wall, who has understood that there's got to be a way to create a product that is drug and chemical free, where nothing goes into the body. Nothing goes into the body. That's pretty big, right? So nothing goes into the body, and it still has the ability to tell the body that it's time to recreate youth, to recreate strength, to sleep better, to help with our muscle mass with exercising, to really help the body on every single level, and to help with pain relief, which of course, pain can come at any time, even for a child. But as you age and the decades build up, there's things like arthritis and all sorts of other little niggly things that happen that can keep you in pain. And so this scientist is the only scientist on the planet. And this is, by the way, I know that after for at least 6 decades, scientists worldwide have been trying to figure out how to activate copper peptide. So that's copper peptide is GHKCU. And the reason why he figured it out, and the reason why it's so important, is because copper peptide, this patch, activates copper peptide within our system. Copper peptide, I don't know if I'm right about this, but I like to say copper peptide is the fountain of youth, because the copper peptide then goes into the telomere, which is that little bit, those little knobs on the end of the DNA, that when they start to degrade and shorten, that's called massive aging, and everything comes with. So what copper peptide does, it goes in and it lengthens the telomeres. So it's literally reversing the aging process. So we're not talking anti-aging or anti-aging creams or creams that tell you they're going to give you a radiant glow. We're talking about from the inside out into your DNA structure being changed in order to give you a radiant glow as we have more revolutions around the sun. So it does that as it is regenerating old stem cells and waking up new ones, like really creating new stem cells. So what happens is we get to a point as humans where, well, 50, 60, 70, there's almost zero stem cells left in the body. And that's why you start to see very deep wrinkling and osteoporosis in women. You start to see a lot of things going on. And the question is, but why? Why is this happening? And of course, it's all about no stem cells and asleep stem cells. So now we have this incredible man who discovered how to put into this patch a technology that works with your own light and energy. And don't you love that? Because it's a radiant aging, and radiance is about light, correct? So we're looking at this going on and creating a situation where it's like a mirror. In fact, I'm just going to put this on now because I've got a little bit of a headache. I've been working hard all day. So now this is all it was. Did you see that? I just peeled the back off and stuck it on. This is called As Simple As That. And all of a sudden, what's happening now is that this little patch is using my own body heat and light to send a message to the pineal gland, which is the doorway to the divine consciousness. that divine consciousness is coming down into the body, and the body is being told what to do. And in this case, it's actually being told to elevate copper peptide within the system so that more of my telomeres can be lengthened and more of my stem cells can start being created. Now this, sorry, darling, I'm just going to finish this sentence. This is changing over a third of my gene structure, changing it, upgrading it. And the last time I spoke to David, he said, yeah, but what about the other 2/3? So guess what he's working on next? Now, Lindsay, I don't think you've heard that. But
No, because this is new.
Exactly. So this scientist is committed to the reverse aging process, not anti-aging, reverse aging. And he says, yes, they know from clinical studies that this does reset a third of our genes back to a younger, healthier, stronger state. And now it's like, okay, let's go for the next 2/3. Pretty exciting. Okay.
Yes. So I just wanted to say that the glutathione protects from disease, and it boosts, I believe, up to 700% in the body. It's like 300 to 700% just from the patch alone, which the injectables or the fat soluble ones don't. And then I love how you placed it on your wrist, because that's triple heater 5. And that's the point to release the muscles in the back of the neck. So why you would have a headache, it would soften. So that's a Japanese point that you would use to soften these muscles here.
Wow.
So for our acupuncturists that are on the live,
well, also
they stimulate points.
Denise call them acupatches,
Mm-hmm.
right? And
Yeah, needleless acupuncture.
Yeah, well, I think you coined that when you first started using them. These are needleless acupuncture, and I thought, oh, of course they are. And you use them in your practice, right?
Yes. So I love them. My patients love them. I started right after I got COVID in 2020. You called me and you're like, put your patches on. And I was like, they're sitting here. Why? I can use needles. I didn't understand that you wear them every day to tell your body to stimulate the different stem cells, to change your brain, all these different things. I was not aware. I was like, well, if it's stimulating patches or stimulating acupuncture points, I'll just put needles. I was not aware of all the science behind it and how much it triggers in the body for your health. And I have to say that I've been wearing them nonstop since 2020. And I didn't wear them maybe for the last month. And I have to tell you, I have been on the couch at like 6:30 in the evening, like dead tired. I'm exhausted. And you know me, I fly back and forth from California to Texas. I'm all over the place. And I'm like, what is wrong? And then last week I was like, oh my God, I'm not wearing my patches every single day like I have been. So it's been an absolute game changer. But for my patients, I had one, I have a firefighter, and I see him, and I haven't seen his wife in like 2 years. And I was like, what's going on? How is your wife? And he's like, Lindsay, I don't know. She's not doing well. She's been a recluse since she had the baby. I'll see if I can find her text in here. But I said, listen, here it is. I said, listen, take this Nirvana patch to her, which is my favorite. It's for anxiety, depression. Within 3 weeks, it changes the brain. I don't know if you want to say anything about the science on it, but it changes the brain. And it's one that I put on and I feel immediately. I know a lot of people put on the Aeon and they feel that immediately. Some people will put these on and not feel a thing. And Sandra's favorite line for that is, you're not going to feel your telomeres growing. So, which is also very true. And I love that. I'm like, I'm going to remember that so I can tell mine. So I said, listen, take this Nirvana patch for anxiety, depression. Ask your wife, 0 through 10. What is bothering you? How much on the scale, 0 through 10? Where is she? So later that day, I was like, and then stick the patch on her and ask her, how she's feeling after that. Later that day, that evening, she wrote me back, okay, wow, just put the patch on me. Her husband just put the patch on me. I can't even describe the instant relief in my body. I hold all of my anxiety and stress in my shoulders, and recently my chest, as in she's been in and out of the hospital and they were going to put her on heavy duty meds. Literally went to the doctors for chest pain and realized I was having panic attacks. I always have a constant ache in my chest, and it's gone. Even when this is like not too long after she put her first patch on, by the way. I've always had a constant ache in my chest, and it's gone. Even when I think about the issue that was stressing me out and giving me anxiety, just wow. Thank you so much. And I'll be investing in these. So that was just one. And then I have another, which is like, that alone is outstanding. I use that story all the time. I have another who he was on like a ninja show in LA where you jump across these crazy, whatever, that you jump from one thing to a lily pad to a moving truck, I don't know, something crazy. And he dislocated his shoulder. So after it was set, the next week, I was like, listen, I've got these patches. I don't know, let's try them. I had not even done any acupuncture on him. And I specialize in sports medicine, orthopedic. And so I put a patch on the back of his neck, and I had put the glutathione or carnosine. Carnosine is for muscles, brain, bone, that kind of stuff. So I had put that one, I believe I put that one on the back of his neck, and he couldn't move his arm off the table, the massage table, but a couple of inches. So then I had put the glutathione on his wrist somewhere. I was just sticking stuff on, playing around with stuff. And then he could move it, I don't know, maybe about 6 inches to a foot off the table. This is his dislocated arm. And I said, you know what, let's put the Ice Wave patches for pain that they also use on thoroughbreds, horses, greyhounds, sports animals. Let's put the Ice Wave patch on your shoulder where it was torn. So I put the Ice Wave patch.
I think Lindsay's, okay, you're frozen.
My injured arm, I put my shirt on, I'm frozen.
Yeah, I think you're starting to come back now. Your video is frozen.
Am I still frozen?
Okay. I can hear you.
Okay, can you hear me though? Yes, or?
No. Okay, we're gonna have,
so that was,
you definitely frozen. We're gonna have to wait till you unfreeze. And then, because I love this story so much, I think it's really important for people to realize that for those of us who are,
it is a good one.
Yeah, oh, you're back. Hang on, let's see. Move. No, it looks like you are freezing a little bit. For those of us who are passionate about the patches, it's because we're getting the benefits, we're seeing it. And it's because the majority of us are simply light workers. And we've come here to help end suffering. We've come here, some of us have had coaching practices. Lindsay is, the most amazing, the training she has done in order to be with the Chinese medicine, the acupuncture, and everything else that she's done. There are so many of us who collaborate together because we have this one focus, and that one focus is like David's, and that is, how do we get a healing technology that does no harm into the hands of so many people? And that's the key, isn't it? Because so many healing modalities do so much harm. Hey, you're back. Do you want to finish that story?
So yes, so I had patched him up, and then the next morning he had messaged me that he could put his shirt on, he could open the drapes, he could do all these things, and he was just as shocked as I was. And then I came in not too long after that. She had severe knee pain, and she couldn't walk from her house to her mailbox. And she came in, she was like an 8 out of 10 with knee pain in a brace. She could barely get up the curb to walk into my office. And I needled her. She got off the table. Her pain was like 2, 3 out of 10. She like hobbled around the office. I stuck some Ice Wave and some stem cell patches on her knees, and she looked at me. She did one lap. She's like, "Are you serious? I have no pain." And
Sweetheart, I'm wondering if you should try and move around somewhere else to a different.
I down be like, good for us.
Yeah, you're definitely cutting in and out.
Oh, it's just absolutely outstanding technology that this is. It makes our jobs.
Can you hear me? Yeah, sorry.
I hear you.
Sorry,
Did you lose me again?
yeah, you cut out again. Can you maybe go to somewhere else in the house to get a better signal? Because I think what Lindsay's got to say is so important, in that being a professional as she is, she's dealt with people on a level from a doctor's perspective, from a natural health perspective. I'm not a doctor. I deal with people. I'm a spiritual mentor and coach. And for 40 plus years, I've been helping people to get neutral to their unconscious programs. In other words, it's like we've got stuff going on. We've got beliefs, stories, and ideas. And a lot of you who are hearing this are probably going, what are these guys talking about? This can't be possible. And this is like being able to open up and find out why we're reacting the way we are, what triggers us. And so for me, after 40 years, really being able to help people on that deep, deep level. And then all of a sudden, 4 years ago, I'm handed one of these and I stick the patch on and it's doing exactly the same thing. And so you can imagine that it's like, all right, so now we know that when you work in the unconscious mind and you go deep enough, you can get clear in order to move beyond where you are, to get neutral and to support the body in getting younger for longer and stronger. But then you get something like this that is doing it in an instant. And I love the fact that we are living in a time where there's going to be a lot of brand new technology on the planet, and especially from LifeWave. And this technology is going to be a big game changer for all of us. For instance, David Schmidt has worked out how he's got a machine that changes the structure of water so that the water reverse ages as well. Now, I know there's a lot of great waters out there. Did you know this, Lindsay? There's a lot.
No, I did not. I'm waiting for his greenhouse to come out too.
Yeah, so there's a lot of really good waters on the market, alkaline and everything like that. This water is like none of those. It is called it's structured water, and he dials in what it needs to do. And so, for instance, with Daniel, I don't know that I'm meant to be telling you this, but I'm going to tell you anyway. So with Daniel, he decided that he really wanted to help my husband who has multiple myeloma cancer. And he said, I'm going to give you my structured water machine from the lab. And it was like, whoa, because these are not being, I'm very naughty telling you this, by the way, these are not coming out until 2024, and they will be available in 2024. So what's happening is that every morning he's having a beaker full of this, we call it holy water, of this structured water. And it's been, he's manipulated the light energy frequency of the light that is top and bottom, and it ruptures cancer cells.
Wow.
So after a week of using them, Daniel had his bloods taken, and the oncologist said, I cannot believe, he said, your markers are 40% better than what they were. And that's only after 1 week. Yes, he was on the treatment plan and the drugs, which are horrific, but we started using the water, and that was the thing. And you can, it's almost like, I said to Daniel, it's almost like you can taste the light, you can taste the frequency within the water. And so this will be, he said, they'll look like a kitchen appliance when they come out, and it'll mean that we can all dial in what we need for, and it's going to work specifically with the stem cell patches. Everything that this man is doing is geared to reversing aging and getting us to a point where we can become pain-free. I interviewed him once, and it was called the Enlightened Leaders Summit, and it was about love and leadership. And when I asked him about love within leadership, you know what he said? He said, it's very hard for people to love when they're in pain. And isn't that the case? That when you're in pain and you're suffering, it's really hard to do anything. And so he has this incredible mission and purpose of being able to alleviate pain. And you're talking about that so beautifully. I'd love to hand it back to you with pain. And because one of the things that I know to be true is that emotional pain is as bad as physical pain, right? Emotional and mental pain. And when I do big talks in big expos, I patch everybody with the Eon and the Iceway and the X39, because Eon is a patch that has been specifically designed to alleviate emotional trauma, works with inflammation and a whole heap of other wonderful things, and pain relief, right? So I put this on people and I muscle test them, and I say, you probably won't feel a thing, but let me muscle test you. And I put their arm out, I get them to stay strong and show them that they're strong. And I ask them, what is challenging you at the moment? I have not had one person go, nothing. Everyone can say, yeah, I've got it. And I ask them to give them a number out of 10, 0 out of 10. And most of them say 5 or 6. But when I tap into the unconscious mind's saying, no, it's more like 8 to 10. And I explain to them that the unconscious mind is giving you the truth, whereas the conscious mind is giving you what it wants to give you, right? It's saying, I just want it to be this. And it's your perception, whereas the unconscious mind's like, nope, it's bad. And I remember patching one woman, and she said to me, before I patched her, she said, this won't work. This is like, she said, you've got no idea what I've been through. I have suffered for decades. This is so bad. This is so horrific. And she kept going on. It's so horrific. It's so shocking. I said, would you let me patch you anyway? Because once she was on a roll of how bad her emotional trauma was, she certainly didn't want to stop telling the story. And you could tell that she was getting more and more worked up. Some of you have probably seen this, or maybe even when you've been telling the story of the challenges you've had, you can feel it, that it's like, oh, it's triggering you again. So I just put one of these on her wrist where I put this, and gave her a sip of water. And I said to her, and how do you feel about that now? She looked at me and she went, about what? And she wasn't joking. About what? She said, I don't know what I was upset about. I can't even find it. That reaction is normal. I had another woman at another expo. She started crying when I patched her because she said, but it was such a bad thing. It was so horrible. And I can't even think about it now. This technology is beyond anything else on the planet. I call it alien technology because, you know, when you think about a non-human race, and if they're able to even connect with us, then there's something that they know that we don't know as far as travel goes, probably as far as everything goes. And so this to me is the beginning of the alien technology coming onto the planet, where you don't need needles and drugs in order to get well and be well. Lindsay,
Yes.
Let's see if you freeze again.
Am I here?
Yes, you
I'm
are.
sitting next to my modem now, so I hope that
Yes, you're there. We've got you. Thank you.
I'm on the floor as close as I can get to it.
Love it.
No, I absolutely, like, I'm almost in tears from those stories. They help people so much, so quickly, you know, to have such a major shift, especially to be neutral to the story. I don't know if you want to talk anything about being neutral to stories, but I think that in of itself is incredibly powerful. And then the work that you have done over the years, which is how I met you, probably like 7-8 years ago. But the work that you do, and then to see David's work help people switch into that state, that dynamic of being neutral to such an intense stimulus, and then be able to let it go, really, you know, leads to such rapid healing.
Yeah, exactly. And some people don't want to let go of their stories. I mean,
We know them.
and honestly, I've probably been one of them at one stage, where you have a story and even unconsciously you just keep telling yourself the story, and it takes you into a place where your body your body actually, the cells in your body are listening to everything you think and say, and they are reacting to everything you think and say. Did you notice I said think and say, not just say? So for all of us, it's really important that you're not only keeping your mouth shut rather than saying negative things about yourself and other people, because this is an important point. The unconscious mind translates everything you say, even about someone else, back to you. So if you're looking at someone and going, oh my God, they're so fat, or they're this, or they're that, your unconscious mind is going, okay, I'm so fat, I'm this, I'm that. And so it's very important that you take control of your mouth and you take control of your thoughts, because all of this leads to an emotional reality that starts the aging process. And that's not a radiant aging process. That's a process that we see day in, day out of the majority of humans who haven't yet cottoned on to the fact that that you have to heal by the speed of your thought and by the speed of light. So healing by the speed of thought and light, you put those two together and you get a 70-year-old like me, well, almost, that can stand up straight, has loads of energy, that can be a caregiver for my husband and do one-on-one calls all day, and doesn't have to color my hair. By the way, my hair was like really silvery platinum, I think, when I met you, Lindsay, and now it's just gone all of these different colors. Everything changes when your stem cells are upgraded.
I also have to tell you, to interrupt you, but you look like you, I know you have not had a facelift, but I know people have said this to you too, but I'm sitting here, I'm like, oh my God, she looks amazing. Like your eyes, everything is lifted. I know I haven't spoken to you online in a bit, but like, oh my goodness, like just looking at you, I am shocked because I've known you for 7 years now, at least, you know, it's like 60 to 70.
I am shocked too, because if I see photos of myself from 7 years ago, my eyelids are on top of my eyes, and now it's so much easier to put my makeup on because I have it. Everything has lifted.
Yes, I can totally see it.
Yeah, I know after COVID, I had people come up to me and say, oh, who's your surgeon? And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, you know, your facelift. And I'm going, no, stem cells, baby. It's like, that's all it is. And that's why I want to reiterate to people that we don't have to age in the traditional sense. We don't have to do anything. In fact, what we do have to do is adapt. And in the adaptation, we have to take on new technologies, new ways of thinking, eating, breathing, healing. And of course, when you're given the opportunity to try a technology like this that is proven by hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people around the world, just take the opportunity, because believe me, this is only going to get better. This scientist is going to continue to bring out technologies that will help us to adapt to this younger, stronger, healthier, longer life. And some of you might be saying, oh, do I really want to even do that? Well, no, you might not want to if you're suffering and if you're in pain and if you don't have the love of your life and you're not, you know, manifesting what you want. But what I find interesting about this technology, it is such a high consciousness, high frequency consciousness, that even all of my coaching clients, as they're using it, they're starting to manifest more of what they want in their life. Now, it could be a coincidence, it might be my great coaching, but I do know that when you start using a technology that is geared to the consciousness of the divine within you, upgrading the divinity of who you are, then you're going to be oscillating at a frequency that becomes very magnetic to other people. You know, you must have this happen to you all the time, Lindsay. People come up to me and say, I want what you're having. What are you having? Right. And I laugh and I go,
what do you do? What are you on?
Yeah. Stem cells, baby, again. And it's so interesting to me that people are not opening their hearts and minds to the fact that that we are in a new era now, and that it's not egotistical, it's not selfish, it's not narcissistic to actually want to be younger, more radiant, healthier. And that's the key word. Let's, you know, healthier, living longer, healthier, not living longer in pain, living younger, healthier. And the fact is that when you use technology like this specific technology, that's exactly what's going to happen for you. And one of the side effects is that you will look and feel at minimum 10 to 20 years younger. The scientific studies show 8 to 10 years, but quite frankly, for me, I feel as good and look as good as I did when I was 50. I probably feel better than what I did when I was 50. And that's a big jump. It's a big hike. And I know, Lindsay, you're only young. You're a puppy at the moment. And so is Dr. East, right? You guys are young. But the fact that you're smart enough to
totally notice.
Yeah. You're
Yeah.
noticing a difference in yourself as well.
Yeah, because I've been battling hypothyroidism, Hashimoto's, like that kind of stuff. And like I was saying, I have been on the patches straight since 2020. And there was a point in time where I was on the couch and couldn't move. And I noticed that I wasn't taking them the last month or so. And it was definitely, it's definitely been the patches. Absolutely. Because I'm not one for supplements. Like I'll occasionally take an herbal formula, like Jiaosan for anxiety, stuff like that. But I usually do not take anything. And it's only the patches that I have been relying on. And I have not been on them. I wasn't on them for like the last 2 or 3 weeks. Just being like, I'll put them on later and then forgetting, which I tell my patients to put them right by their toothbrush. So they remember, they grab their toothbrush, they grab their patches. Exactly. And not to put them in a drawer. Yeah. I carry, I carry a book bag around everywhere for work, for the office and stuff like that, with all my supplies and stuff like that, if I'm traveling locations, and I keep them right in there. But I'm like, why do I not feel well? What is going on? Why am I so tired? Where is this fatigue? My friends would invite me out. I'm like, no, I can't do it. And then I'm like, oh my God, I haven't been wearing my patches. And it really is a dramatic difference.
Yeah, and game changer.
What was that?
You're a game changer.
Yes, absolutely. And to go back to what you were just saying about being healthy and helping people, there's a Tony Robbins quote that I love, and it's something about, I think he takes it from someone else, I can't even remember, maybe even the Bible, but it's something about the more you have, the more you can give. But really, when you're in that state that you're able to be productive and you're able to turn around and help others, you really can only help others when you have a full cup, right? Like that tarot card, the cup of Ace of Cups. Your cup, if your cup is full, then it's flowing over to others. If it's not full and you don't feel good, you're not helping anybody, not even yourself. So these really do help you perform to the best of your ability, and they really help you achieve the goals that you want. And it's a process, right? You have to wear them, and you have to help yourself take care of yourself. But it has been a noticeable difference energy-wise. Absolutely.
So if there's any questions, I know a lot of the questions we get is, well, how long do you wear them for? And you wear each patch for 12 hours. So you put them on and you take them off 12 hours later, and then you discard them. Or if you've got a cat and a dog that you love, you can put them on them for 5 or 6 hours. It is an organic crystalline structure that is completely sealed, both sides. Again, nothing goes into the body. And the organic crystalline structure does degrade starts to degrade, and by 24 hours, it's no longer active. And that's why when people say, well, why only 12 hours? That's the main active period for them. And I know a lot of people who have dogs and cats who are suffering from all sorts of glaucoma, blindness, arthritis. They've used these with massive results for their fur babies. And so you've got to drink a lot of water. I always say patch, hydrate, heal. I give them to my 74-year-old sister. What else would I give my sister other than new stem cells, right? And she has just started going to a gym and lifting weights. And I'm going, what are you doing? Why? She said, I don't know. I just feel like I can. I never thought I'd do this in my life. And her skin's starting to improve. And she said, but boy, they call for water a lot, don't they? I said, is that another way of saying you're thirsty? And she said, yeah, I'm thirsty. And that's the thing. Remember, this is working with your own energy, and body heat and light. And so it takes the water to move all of that through the system. And
Yes.
also they have a slight detoxing, most of them have a slight detoxing. Do you find that, Lindsay? Even though we know glutathione does, but
Yes, I know that we've patched people, like thinking of June and everybody else at the event. Like I go back and they're like, I'm high, you know, and you look at their eyes and they're like glossed over, a little bit hazy. I would like relate it to probably like a detox from whatever they got going on. And then
Yeah.
just to remind people to take them off for an hour or two, put them back on if they feel it. But once their body gets used to it, it's fine. I wear mine all the time with no issues.
I want to go back to what you said.
Yes.
Honestly, the majority of people don't feel anything to start with.
Yes.
And for me, this is really important. If you're listening to us and you're going, okay, I want those benefits and more, because we're only giving you a few of the benefits. You need to commit minimum 6 months to 12 months, because it's going to take that long for these patches to activate enough stem cells for you to really start going, whoa, now I know what they're talking about. I've had people take a photo of themselves, and I say this to everybody, track the changes. Take a photo of yourself before you start wearing them, 3 months, 6 months, and a year later, and you'll have a collage and it will look like a different woman. Linda, who's a close friend of ours, she sent 3 photos, one from 2 years ago, one from 1 year ago, and one from this year to somebody to make into a flyer. And the person said, why is this grandmother, mother, and daughter? What have they got going? And I'm going, no, it's the same woman. She said, it can't be. They look, the generation, they look so different. But she's been on them for 2 years, right? So I know people, they can see within a month, they're going, wow. Yeah. And all sorts of things are happening, and they're getting everything.
Hair growth.
Hair growth, thicker. Everything becomes more radiant and brilliant and beautiful, because you're healthier, because you're showing up as the best version of who you are, rather than a compromised version, because of your health and your thought process. Remember, I'm going to keep going back to that thought process. And it's very important to make sure that you treat yourself as an holistic being, that you have a body, mind, and soul, that you have an emotional, physical, mental reality, that all of it needs to be fed, and all of it needs to be given the right information at the right time in order for you to flourish and to have I love this, show up as the best version of you. And right now at my age, and even though my husband is in a life and death situation, we have these conversations, and I say to him, I feel like this is the best version of me at the moment. And he goes, without doubt, this is the best version of you. And we've known each other for 25 years. And I would have thought he'd think that 25 years ago, when he met me and was madly in love, that he would think that was the best version. But no, as we grow emotionally, become neutral, more balanced, as we become wiser, and as we commit to a technology that is going to really be the biggest game changer on the planet, anything is possible. Do we have any questions? Are we allowed to ask if people have got questions?
I think we do have one. Let me see. I'll read it to you. Sandra, what patches do you use daily and where?
Yep.
X39 and Aeon.
Yeah, thank you.
Do you use Alavita? Your skin is amazing.
Thank you, Chantel. Yeah, I know, it's amazing. It blows me away. I'm going to give you a secret here. I can hardly wait to get up in the morning to have a look at my skin. I'm like, oh, what's it done today? It's a bit like being a little girl, right? So yes. Obviously I'm wearing, every day I am wearing the X39 stem cell patches. And because I just know that at my age, 4 years ago, I had none left. So I'm not going to give up on that. I do wear the energy enhancer patches. They burn 300 calories from your own fat stores every day to activate the mitochondria to give you a more energized cell. And remember, if the cell is more energized, then the stem cells can go in and do a better job. And what I found is with the energy enhancer patches, is that I use them on my lower back because I have, believe it or not, 3 fully degenerated discs. In other words, I'm bone on bone. And after an MRI and sobbing for 2 months, I thought I was going to be in a wheelchair. And nope, my friend patched me with this, with Eon, and with the energy enhancer patches, and it was like gone within an hour. And I haven't had that pain since. So I'm definitely wearing Eon. I wear glutathione every 3rd day, and I'm wearing carnosine, which is about organ health. And at night, I am absolutely, my nighttime patch is this and aloe vera. Aloe vera is it tells the body to produce collagen and a whole heap of other things. I don't know them all yet because I read the science, I get blown away by it, but I'm not bogged down in it. All I know is that aloe vera is a skincare system like nothing else. So if the aloe vera comes in a pack of moisture, daytime and nighttime moisturizer, and 2 months worth of patches for $150. I'm saying that because my eye creams used to cost a lot more than that. So my skincare routine has drastically gone down in price, but drastically gone up in effects. So I would say that if you were using Eon and aloe vera at night, and you were using X39 and the energy enhancer patches and glutathione every 3rd day, you've got a combination there. But if your budget can only go for one patch, I would absolutely do the stem cell patch, and don't do what Lindsay did and forget them. Put them on every single day, because this is, look, it's the big kahuna of the patches. It's going to do so much for you. The stem cell patches are $100 for a month. That's 30 days worth of stem cell activation patches. Now, I've got girlfriends who've spent $2,700 on shark stem cells in their body. I've got other friends who have spent $18,000 on stem cell IVs. And I say to the doctor, okay,
For 30 in Panama, where one of my friends is going.
right. And I said to one of the doctors who said, oh, I can get you this for $18,000. And I'd say, how much of those stem cells will my body uptake? He said, oh, 20%. I'm going, okay, so for $18,000, I can get some stem cells that my body will uptake 20% of. I don't know where they're going to work and what they're going to do, and then they're done. Whereas for $100 a month, $1,200 a year, plus tax and shipping, I can actually have my own stem cells being regenerated and working